All right, guys. All right. Welcome to Frank Teaches DevOps. Hey, my lovely viewers. Yes, guys. So today, we will be looking at building, uh-huh, building a scalable, scalable data warehouse. All right, on Amazon Redshift. Yes, guys, you hear me well. So we want to see how we will be able to implement a data warehousing, right, on Amazon with AWS Redshift, right? So implement a scalable data warehouse on Amazon on Amazon using AWS Redshift. Yes, guys, right? So that being said, great. That being said, right? Now let's now first look at what a data warehouse is. What exactly is a data warehouse? A data warehouse is a concept, a process. All right. I hope we've started recording. Oh, that's it. That's good. Now let's now look at what's actually a data warehouse. Data warehouse. Now take an idea from the keyword warehouse. You already know what a warehouse is. A warehouse is where goods and services are stored. That's a warehouse. A literal definition of a warehouse, right? A place where goods and services are stored. Now, literally, we could say a data warehouse is a place where data, both structured data, is a place where structured data are stored. All right. Now, we would say that technically, we will now say that a data warehouse, I will be abbreviating data warehousing with WDW. Right? Data warehouse is a process of collecting, storing. When you collect, you store, and you manage. And manage, it's my screen, right? Good. And manage large volumes of data from different sources, right? Manage large volumes of data from different sources, right? And place them in a central repository, all right? So that it um so so it can be what analyzed and analyzed and used for business intelligence and decision making, right? For business intelligence and what decision 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 making. So this is what a data warehousing is all about. When you collect data from different sources, you store them, all right, and you manage them and use them to make analysis for business decisions. That is what a data warehousing is all about. All right. And in today's section, we will look at what implement data warehousing, a full-blown data warehousing on Amazon, on AWS, using Amazon Redshift, right? So let's go further. How does a data warehouse work? How does a data warehouse works? How does it work? All right. Now, a data warehouse usually data usually flows into a data warehouse. So in this context now, when we're talking about a data warehouse, we are referring to a bucket, a tooling, right? A tool for implementing a data warehouse. A data warehouse is a concept, all right? It is what? It is a concept, okay? It's a process, all right? Great. So how does it work? So data flows into a data warehouse through three main ways. We'll say that data flows into a what? Data warehouse via three main ways. The first way is data flows through um uh the data flows into a data warehouse by extraction, right? Extraction. First, data is pulled from different sources, right? So extraction, we could use tools that have the capability, they have the tendency of extracting data, for pulling data from different sources. So what extraction will do is it pulls data from what? Different sources. From different sources. All right? Great. The next one is transform. After these data have been pulled, most of the time, these data are raw data, raw, unclean, unstructured. All right. So these data are raw data, unstructured, unclean. All right. Now, the transformation phase does what we call cleansing. Cleansing. Cleansing, thereby turning the data into a structured form, thereby turning the data into a structured form ready for analysis. Okay, then the last part is load. Once this data has been transformed, all right, and maybe it has been saved in a data lake. Yeah. So example of a data lake also is a concept. A typical example of a data lake is AWS. In the context of AWS, is AWS S3. All right. Now, the data has been transformed and has been saved on S3. Now, this data will now be loaded, all right, into what? Into the data warehouse, right? So at this point, we'll now move the what? The transformed data into where? Into the what? Data warehouse. So if I were to diagrammatize this, right, we would say this part is the extract. transform, and load. Transform, and load. All right. Load into where? Into your what? Data warehouse. After extracting, the data is being transformed and the data is being loaded into your what? Data warehouse. So this is where the data will be before it's being used for analysis, business intelligence, decision making, before it to be used for what? Analysis, analysis, uh-huh, business intelligence, and decision making. So you can see this is how data flows into a what? A data warehouse, right? There are three ways: extract, transform, and load. Okay, great. Let's move further. Okay, once this data is now in a data warehouse, the data can be used for analysis, business intelligence, as well as decision making. Now, what are the key components? Key components of key components of a data warehouse. Key components of a data warehouse. Key components. Let's list them. Key components. First is a data source. There has to be a data source. Where are you curating your data from? Where is your data source? The data source could be from DBs, databases, it could be from logs, it could be from APIs, it could be from storage. Let's put that as well. Storage, blob storage, that storage, all right, network storage, etc., etc. Okay, great, guys. Now, after that, we have the ETL tools. Yes, your data could come from what? Different ETL tools, right? So we have ETL tools like AWS Glue, there's AWS Glue, there's Apache, Airflow, there's Starland, a whole lot, guys, etc., etc. All right, etc., etc. Now, other sources of um other key components of data warehouse is data warehouse storage. Yes, where the data is going to sit, where the repository, a central repository where your data is going to reside, is going to sit. All right. So in AWS, we have AWS Redshift. AWS Redshift. We have Snowflake. Snowflake is there. Snowflake. Uh-huh. We have Google BigQuery. Google what? BigQuery. Query. And we have Azure. Azure Synapse. Synapse. I hope I can spell that well. Etc. Etc. Right? They also have other components, which is the BI tools, business intelligence tools. So these are key components of your data warehousing. All right. So business, we have the Power BI. We all know Power BI. Power BI is there. We have the AWS QuickSight. AWS QuickSight. And we have the Tableau. Tableau is also there. Tableau, the Tableau, etc., etc. So these are the major key components of a data warehousing. All right. Now we move further to look at the features, because all of these has to be understood before going further, all right, to implementing what a data warehousing. right? Now, what are the features? Okay, so features of the data warehousing. All right, what are the characteristics? The characteristics is they are used for optimizing, all right, heavy workloads, right? Um, 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 one of the characteristics, okay, used for optimizing, all right, heavy data workloads, right? When we say heavy data workloads, we are referring to our what? Big data, right? Petabytes of data, petabytes, petabytes, petabytes of data, all right? So that is what a data warehousing is is used for, right? That is the characteristics. The tendency, all right, to accommodate huge lumps of data, huge chunks of data, big data, all right, which runs into petabytes, right? Petabytes of size. That is what a data warehouse is known for. And also, it also acts as a single source of truth, all right, for data analysis. Analysis. All right. Now, once all your data is now um in your data warehouse, right? Okay. Um, you can perform these tasks, right? Especially analysis. All right. Well, let's say for instance, let's give us a typical example. For example, you have data from different sources. Let's say, for instance, you have sales data. You have sales data in MySQL, which is which talks about components. Okay, data source. All right, you have in MySQL or your DB. Let's say your DB, sales data in your DB, and you have your marketing data in in Google, in Google BigQuery, and maybe you have your customer data, customer logs somewhere. Let's say Zendex, etc., etc. With data warehousing, you can combine all of these. You can combine all of these into one place. All right. You can combine all of these into one place. Now we're now combining. Let's use this. Combine all of these data into your what? Into your what? Data warehouse. So this is a typical illustration of what a data warehousing is. So in contrast, so a data warehouse is, all right, it provides, it's like a central repository, all right, where data are stored and kept there for advanced analysis. That being said, guys, let's now hop into what? AWS, right? We'll now hop into AWS and see how we will what? Implement a data warehousing using AWS Redshift. Okay, so this will be our demo. All right, implement a scalable data warehouse on Amazon using AWS Redshift. Okay, great. So these are our flow. Our flow is this, right? So we will have what we call data lake. So somewhere here we have our data lake. Like we said, data lake is a concept. A typical example of a data lake is an S3. A data lake is where your structured and unstructured data are kept, right? So in this context, our data lake is S3, right? And this data that is residing in S3 will be moved to somewhere called what? The what? Called our data warehouse. So we use Redshift, AWS Redshift as our what? Data warehouse. All right, guys. So we will move this data from S3 into this guy, right? Once this guy has been there, then we can now start performing operations. Analytical operations could be anything, right? But for today's course, right, we'll look how we will move data, structured data from S3 to AWS Redshift, then see how we can start performing some operations, some SQL-based operations on the data residing now in Redshift. All right. So we shall now see perform SQL level analysis on the what? On the data. All right. So now let's go to AWS. So I'll go to my AWS and I'll search for Redshift. I'll go to Redshift. All right. So go to Redshift. Now let's look. So you say, what's a Redshift? It's a fast, fully managed petabyte scale cloud data warehouse. It's a cloud-based data warehouse. Right? That's what Redshift is. Okay. Now it says what? A Redshift makes it easier for you to run and scale analytics without having to manage your data warehouse. Get insights by running real-time and predictive analytics on all of your data across operational databases, data lake, data warehouse, and thousands of third-party data sets. All right. So this is the beauty. So what we're doing here is straightforward. We will be creating what? A cluster, a Redshift cluster. So let's get started. So click on what? Create cluster. So this brings us into this section of creating cluster, right? So I can give you the cluster name. Let me call it big data. Oh no, doesn't support this. Big data cluster. So that is our cluster name, big data cluster. Now choose the size of your cluster, right? There are two options. I will choose, help me to choose. So if you allow Redshift to help you to choose, right? It's going to choose things that might run you into expenses. So you have to be very careful. Expenses, too much of expenses, right? So let's say I will choose. I will make the decision. Okay. Now, let me look at. Help me to choose. How many months of data that your data has contained? 12 months. Blah 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 blah. I'm just looking at the cost. All right, let's choose. I will choose. I will choose now the node type because it is a cluster, it's a compute service. All right, it has some node. So you have to specify your node. So what it's saying is it's trying to give us this node type that has 12 virtual CPUs, okay, and about 128 terabytes of data on the node. Right, so don't need this. This is too expensive. So take it very low. Come down here. All right. This is the minimum size, 8 TB and 2 CPUs. All right. So that's okay, just for testing purpose. Now we come to the next stage, which is AZ configuration, availability zone configuration, right? So for redundancy, right, you always prefer you go for multi-AZ, right? Multi-AZ. I can see as you click advanced features, the price increases, right? The price increases, all right? So, but for demo sake, let's keep it simple towards single AZ, right? Now, number of nodes. So also, if you increase this, your money increases. You can see the number of worker nodes in your what in your cluster. So let's keep it simple. I just want one instance in that what cluster. Simple, simple configuration, straightforward. Now, also you can load sample data. Redshift comes with what sample data. You can load sample data into your data warehouse, but we don't want to do that, right? We want to what show us how to load the sample data, as load the data from our data lake by ourselves. All right. Now here comes the interesting part, which is database configuration. So Redshift uses Postgres, all right, at the back end. So it has its own database as well, right? That runs on a port range from Postgres, all right? So you can give it the name, the admin user of to that database, right? Any name will serve, but I'm keeping it simple, AWS user, all right? Now, admin password, okay? There are different ways you can save your password. You can manage your password using AWS Security Manager, all right? You can generate the password, or you can what manually create your password. But let's use the generated password, all right? So here's the password. So I'll copy this password and I'll save it somewhere. That's it. There we go. Okay. Now choose a key type, AWS own key. That's okay. That's okay. Cluster permission. Now, if you're doing this for the first time, all right, you always create a what an IAM rule. You allow this process, this wizard, to create an IAM role on your behalf. Okay. Now, once the role is created, the role comes empty, doesn't have permission to other data sources. Other data sources like your S3, your Glue, right? So now, once this role is being created, you have to what? Add permission. I'll show us at that. I'll show us when I'll show us when we get there. When we want to what move data from our S3 into Glue. If such permission is not there, you're going to have some challenges. I'll show you all of that. All right. So if you're doing this for the first time, click on what create IAM role, and it automatically creates this special role. It's called Amazon Redshift Commands Access Role. Right? Great. Now, additional configuration, right, is saying we should use a default, right? But you can always edit this default. You can come here, click on use, put off this use default, and set up your network configuration, network and security. So I come here, I can change my security group. What do I have? VPC. Oh, sorry, I'm in a wrong I'm in a wrong I'm in a wrong what's it called, region. But that's okay. Let's but I need to show you guys this thing. Let me change my region, please. 1 second, please. I was on the wrong region, island. So I'll redo this. I was on a wrong region. All right, so let's call this big data cluster, right? I will choose this easy one, okay. AWS that generates password, show the password, copy the password, paste it there. Okay. Yeah, we're good. Okay. You have this. All right. Okay. Now edit this. All right. Come to what? Network and security. So under here, you have your VPC. Right. So your VPC will not be active, not until you create a subnet group. So there has to be a subnet group attached to your VPC, then your VPC will be active. Look at this now. It says something here. There's a clause here. It says only VPCs under subnet group can be selected. That's only VPCs under a subnet group can be what? Selected. You cannot change the VPC associated with this cluster after the cluster has been what? Created. Just look at this first sentence. Only VPCs under subnet group can be selected. So what that means is that if I wanted to use my own VPC, I have to go and create a subnet group. A subnet group, I'll get a subnet group somewhere, yeah, configuration, a subnet group. All right, so that's okay. Let's make use of default settings. All right, default VPC, default security group. That's okay. That's in the default subnet. Everything is default. Cluster subnet group. So you can see this is the only subnet group we have. Okay. Availability zone, you can take one of those availability zones, and database configurations. The database name is dev. You can always change the database, all right? And the database port, by default, it uses this port 5439. And the parameter group is this. It creates a default parameter group for you. Maintenance. Let's check what's under maintenance. Everything under maintenance, you leave it as it is. Monitoring, you leave it as it is. Then backup, you leave it as it is. All right. Click on create cluster. Creating this cluster takes about let's say minimum of 5 minutes. All right. Let's just stay put while the cluster gets created. So it's coming up. Let's give it some time, right? So what we're now doing is we are now creating our cluster. So after the cluster has been created, we will now go towards S3 to upload our data, all right, to our S3 bucket. So now let me show us something. Remember, let's click on the cluster. Properties. Remember, we showed us permission. Thank you. The role that we created. So this is the role. So what I will do now, I'll go to what AWS IAM and show us that role and show us the permission in that role. All right. So I'll go to IAM. Go to IAM. What's the name of the role? The name of the role is this. Let's go and search for it. Copy. Roles. Search for the role. There we go. So this is the role. So click on the role, right? So let's look at permissions in the role. So this role has these permissions, right? It has access to Redshift, full access. Then when I was demonstrating this the first time, all right, I had some errors, all right? I had some errors connecting, pulling data from S3 into Redshift. Why? Because Redshift does not have the right permission to pull data from S3. For that, this rule that got created, you have to what? Add a policy, all right? A policy that gives Redshift the permission to pull data from your what? S3 into your what? Data warehouse, all right? So if you remove this now, and if you try to pull data from S3 into data warehouse, we're going to have permission errors, all right? So to avoid that, you have to what? Add this policy, all right? Add this policy, and everything will be smooth, all right? Everything will be smooth. Let's get back to our cluster and see if it's now available. Yes, our cluster is now what? Available, all right? Let's go back to this level. Great. So the cluster is now available. So what you do, select this cluster, you come to query data, right? There are two forms of query. We have the query version 1 and query version 2. So query version 1, let's look at the query version 1. So the query version 1 does not give us too much of what's it called? This is how it looks. All right. There's no formatting. Okay. So the first thing you do now is we're using version 1. You can what? Connect to a database before you start using the data warehouse. Remember, while we were creating the data warehouse, we created a database. Remember, yes, a database named dev, and the port was 5439. All right. So before, as you can see, we don't have any database here. There's no database yet. There's no schema. So we need to what? Connect to a database. So let's click on connect to a database. So what we are using now, we are using version 1. Okay, great. So what we're going to do is create a new connection, all right? And authentication, we are using the temporal credentials. Then the database name is dev, and the database user is AWS user. If you still remember, guys, all right? Now click on what? Connect. 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 Let's see if this goes through. Now it now tells us that your database is now connected. You can see the database is connected, right? So all the while I've been using version 2. So this is the first time I'm using version 1, but I'm going to show us how to use version 2 as well. So this is your database is now there, and your schema, it uses a public schema. You can see there's information schema, there's PG Postgres catalog schema, the public schema. So everything goes to your what? Public schema. All right. So now that we have our here, so we need to load our data. How do we load the data? So let's go to so now good. So this version 1 does not perform data loading for you. So you have to run the query. You have to run your SQL query here. SQL selects asterisk from blah 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 from your data lake, etc. etc. Right. Once you've run that, you click on what? Run. So this query editor version 1 does not give us that unattended functionality, right, to perform the loading on your behalf. Okay, it does not perform the loading on our behalf. So for that reason, we won't be using version 1. We will be using what? Version 2. I'll show us how to use version 2. So version 2 will help us in pulling the data from S3 into what? Redshift. Okay, great. So for that, let's go to S3 and let's look at our data source. Let's look at our data S3. All right, so I've already uploaded the data from my local machine, right, into my bucket. So on S3, you create a bucket. Simple. This is very straightforward to create a bucket on S3. So this is the bucket, test data engineer. So that's the bucket. So on this bucket, I have a lot of CSV files, customer data, sales data, etc., etc. So all of these could be loaded into your what? Your data warehouse. These, we are assuming these are big data, which we need to pull, all right, from S3 into your what? Your Redshift. From S3 into Redshift. All right. So we need to pull this data from S3 into what? Redshift. Okay. So you can use any data, guys. You make use of any data. It could be in any format. It could be CSV, it could be Excel, it could be whatever. All right, great, guys. So I've uploaded this data here. Now let's go back to Redshift. So I won't be using version 1 of my query editor. So what I will be using is what? Version 2. Let's come back here and let's go to our cluster. Where's our cluster again? View cluster. I can do it from here, right? Cluster. Here's my cluster. So select your cluster, come to query data, and select query editor version 2. So your query editor version 2 opens a new tab, all right? There was a new tab for you, and yeah, so let's see how it looks like. So Redshift query editor version 2. As you can see, we already have our cluster here, but the cluster is not connected. You can see there's no database connected to this cluster. So it's saying create a connection. The same way we created a connection on version 1. So we have to create a connection. So come here, click this 3 dots and click on what? Create connection. So once you do that, it gives you a lot of options. You can see on version 1, there were fewer options, but in version 2, we have more options. So I'll come down here and say database username and password. All right. Or you can say temporal credentials using this, right? But I already have username and password. Let's use this method. Database username and what? Password. The database is dev. The username is AWS user. And the password, remember, there was a generated password, which is this. So I'll give the password here. Show password. There we go. Click on create connection. So once we do this, this guy should change to green, instructing us that a connection has been what? Established. You can see now. The moment the connection has been created, we have these links, right? It's like data store. Okay. Native database, let's check. So you can see we have a database. We also have sample data, right? So we didn't load the sample data. So I think it's empty, right? Remember when we were creating the cluster, we saw load sample data, which we did not use it, right? We didn't take it. That's why this data is empty, right? Great. So in our database, which is dev, in our database, we have a public schema, which is public, okay? And the public schema for now has these entry. It has tables, views, functions, stored procedures, but for now, all of these are empty. So we are going to load our data from S3 into our what? Public table, right? Into our tables, okay? So we're going to load that right now. So what we'll do now is we'll click on what? Load data, right? Load data. Now, where is our data source? We said earlier that there are what? Different key components of data warehousing, and one of which is your what? Data source. Key component of data warehouse, your data source. So my data source is my S3. So let's go back there. So I'm going to load my data from your S3 buckets. So I will select browse the S3 buckets. So my S3 bucket is what? Test data. Then the data I want to pick, I want to pick customer data, customer 1, right? You can pick one at a time, right? One at a time. Click on choose. Now the file format is CSV. There are different file formats. JSON, the different file format, guys. Right? Great. Then click on next. Now in here now, we will be creating a new table. We're not going to be loading our data into an existing table. Rather, we'll be loading our data into a new table. So I'll select load data into a new table. So this will give us the option to specify a table name. You can see we already have the schema of the table of the data we pulled from S3. So this is schema: customer ID, customer name, email, city, country, territory, contacts, whatever. All right. Now we are loading into what? This cluster, and the database is dev, and our schema is a public schema. Then let's give it a table name. Let's call it customer table, customer underscore table. Right now, the I am role, that I am role, this is where you specify it. All right. Once that is done, now for your table, you need to create a primary key. Select either of the column customer ID and come here and check that column is my what? Primary key. Okay. Click on what? Create table. So it says what? Table was successfully created. Customer ID is the primary key. You can see primary key. Now let's load the data now. Click on load data. Now this is the command I was talking about. Loading into table was successful. Now this is a command. If we were using a Redshift query version 1, query editor version 1, we would have typed this command by ourselves. You can see how long it is. But with version 2, I don't need to do anything. It will just generate the command for us and load the data into our table. As it is now, we now have a data in our what? In our table. Let's close this. So I come to our public schema. All right, come to public schema. You can see tables. We have one table. Open tables. We have customer table. So now at this junction now, we can now start performing some analysis, SQL level analysis, whatever. If you want to further clean your data, right, you can do it at this level. Let's go on. Let's peruse it. Let's select asterisk from table. The table name is customer table, right? Now I can run this. Click on run. So this is our record. You can see. So we've successfully what? Moved the data from S3 into what? Our data warehouse. All right. I can limit the number of limits to, let's say, limit 5. It does the magic for you. All right. If I just need customer ID, select customer ID, customer name, email, and let's say city from this guy. Let's run that. You can see. All right. So you can load more data. Let's load other data again. Go back to load. Let's go to load. Load, sorry, from S3, select your buckets. Here's my bucket. Let's say I need sales data 1. Let's pick sales data, choose. All right. Next, create a new table. Schema, public schema, table, let's call it sales. All right. So this sales looks very unstructured. So that's where your transform comes handy. That is part of how does a data warehouse work. So that's where transform comes in, by cleaning your data before moving the data into your what? Your data lake, right? Which you can later move from data lake into your what? Data warehouse, right? So this data is unclean, very unclean, right? Very unclean data. Okay, let's just load it. Okay, create table and load. Loaded. So I come over here and refresh. I should have 2 tables. I have sales, right? So I can query data from sales editor. Select asterisk from what? Sales. So run. So that's it. So you can see, very unstructured. Column 1, consumer. This is very unstructured. So it needs a lot of, there are also some missing data. Very, very missing data. Very unstructured. So this data needs cleaning. All right? Great. So the whole idea of today's session was to show us how to what? Implement a what? A scalable data warehouse on Amazon using AWS Redshift. Guys, I hope this session has been very, very informative, and I hope to see you guys in our next edition of data engineering, right? The next edition of data engineering. So once you're done, guys, make sure you do clean up so that you don't end up accruing bills. All right, packing up bills. So let's do some cleanup. So once you're done, you have to disconnect from the database. So you disconnect your cluster from the database. You right click on it and you click on what? Delete connection. All right, click on delete connection, and that connection is gone. You have successfully deleted authentication details of big data cluster. So this is it. All right, you can always create your connection back. All right, so that's it. So what do we do now? Go back to our Redshift and delete our cluster. Select the cluster, come to actions, click. You can pause, you can reboot, you can pause, you can edit, you can resize. All right, you can perform a lot of operations. All right, great. You can register your cluster with AWS Glue catalog. Right, this might come later in the future. Right, where we shall see how to what pull your data from your um from other sources like AWS Glue. All right, AWS Glue. Okay, so AWS Glue is an ETL tool. You can see from here, key components. Key components. ETL tools are also key components of your what? Data warehouse. There's a glue here, all right? And glue is an ETL tool. It does extract, transform, and load, right? So this data that we got, the sales data that we got that is very unstructured, you can see they're very unstructured. So to structure it, we can do that in what? AWS Glue. But that will be a lesson for another day, right? So for now, let's delete our cluster. Now, in the course of building a cluster, by default, AWS will automatically check this box, create final snapshot. In case this action maybe was done via a mistake, was done by mistake, you have a snapshot. From that snapshot, you can restore your what? Your cluster. But this is not a mistake. We don't want to create any snapshot. So I'll uncheck this box and go ahead for what? For deletion. Delete and click on what? Delete cluster. Right? So once this cluster is being deleted, your connection here will also what? Be deleted from your what? Query editor. So guys, thank you. And I hope this session has been very informative, and hope to see you in our next episode. Thank you and have a wonderful week ahead. Thank you.